So just start with your name and title.
Okay. My name is Lisa Zeigler Allen, and I am faculty at the J. Craig Venter Institute and also affiliated with Scripps Institution of Oceanography.
If you could tell us the science you're working on, if you can talk about it.
Yes, I can talk about it. So, my field of study is within viral ecology. And primarily, I study marine viruses. And so, what that means is that I want to know things like how viruses interact with their hosts, and then also how those interactions impact the whole ecosystem around them or the food web around them, you can think of it. So, really, those are kind of the two big questions that all of our research kind of falls into underneath.
Is that the science you're passionate about, or what science are you most passionate about?
Yeah, I mean, I do. Yes, for sure it is, which I'm lucky that I am getting to study what I'm most passionate about. I think in more of a bigger picture, where the passion really is that food web understanding, I think, which is kind of the understanding of how organisms, as well as so the biology as well as the chemistry, are all interacting. Um, because once we have an understanding of what sort of a natural ecosystem looks like, we can understand how things like us are interacting with that, back and forth, and how that can affect that ecosystem. So in a grand scheme, I think what I'm really passionate about is how are we changing this world around us, and do we even understand what that is? I don't even know that we do. I don't know the answer to that question. But those are sort of those bigger passion questions that I think about a lot.
Yes. Who has been your inspiration? Doesn't have to be a scientist, could be, or it can be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's hard because, right? I mean, there's so much, but there's so many inspirations. So I think for this, I did go with a science because a scientist, yes. I went back and forth on this question, actually, because there's definitely some aspects to being a mother and raising children and my children and how much they inspire me so often, because there's so many times where I'm just down and out, and my kids actually inspire me to continue to write that next grant, to go give that talk, even when I'm scared to death to get in front of people, which definitely happens. However, scientist wise, there is a woman that also just I go back to her a lot, actually, and her name is Rachel Carson, if anyone has heard of her. So she had sort of a brief time on this earth, but I think a really big impact, and she's had a big impact on me as a scientist and reading her writings, and just knowing what I know about her. So she was a woman aquatic biologist in a time when none of those were in favor. So women in science not in favor, and even biology was not in favor, right? Because that was during the time where there's like nuclear explosion. Everyone was interested in sort of nuclear science. But one thing that I loved about her was that she didn't necessarily think about academia or other scientists when she was doing her writings, and when she was looking at her research. It was all about the public, and that it was important that the public gets to know that it's a human right to know, and that know, whatever that know is, be it the science or what's going on around them, is important. And so I think she has just always been someone that her books and her writings I like to go back to, because just sort of ground me again and make me remember and realize, what is this all about?
So what kind of high school student were you?
Yeah, so I'm not like one of those cool kids. I was, a pretty geeky kid. I liked school. I liked doing well in school, and I did. But I was also involved in a lot of extracurriculars. So I was involved in the school newspaper. I did a lot of different sports. So I still had fun. But yeah, and one of the main reasons though too is that I really wanted to go to college, but college was not something that was in my future necessarily. And I knew that growing up, that it wasn't a given and it wasn't really pushed. So for me, I kind of had that inner ambition as a very young kid, that it was something that I knew I wanted to do, because I wanted to see where I could go.
If you were going to give your high school self advice from your present self today, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's hard. I think that question is hard for me to answer, because I have an answer and I'll get to it, but it's so different now than like even my kids' age, they're not even in high school, they're in elementary school, but Ella's being in 5th grade, I already see it. There's a lot more pressure, I feel like, on kids now, and pressure that I don't even understand exactly what it's like for them. But I think along that is, and it's something that you always say too, is to stay curious, but not just necessarily curious about what's going on around you, but also curious about what's going on with you. So why are you making those choices? Why do you feel those emotions? Really kind of taking more of an introspective. And I think that it's okay to do that. And I think that's how we really find out and push ourselves further. So I think, yeah, being curious, but also knowing that it's okay not to know. I had no clue what I wanted to do. I had little things. I had ambitions and I had goals, but I didn't know this grand scheme. I didn't think I was going to be a doctor or want to be or no, I didn't have that. And I think that's okay, because what happened was I had this weird trajectory, but every time when I think back about it, I knew exactly what I was doing in the moment. And I was getting, that one step closer to where I am now, which I'm very happy in what I get to do. But so I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense. Be curious, but it's okay not to know.
Be curious. It's okay not to know everything. Well,
Yeah.
2 random facts that I could not guess about you, and I could not Google it until after this.
So this one was really hard for me. I don't know. One of them you might be able to, I don't think you can Google, but you might know. But the other one, maybe you don't. So my great grandpa drove cattle. And so horses have always been a big part of my life. I think I actually told you this just the other day, but I used to wake up at 4 a.m., sneak out of my house, the only time I ever snuck out of my house, so that I could go riding. And the saddle that I ride in is actually one that my great grandpa made. I still have it. My mom is holding on to it until hopefully I can have horses again. But yeah, so that is something that has just something I love. And I love being around horses. I think they're super special creatures. And that was a really big part of me growing up too. And probably formed a lot of who I was, because I had some shy characteristics, some when I was younger. And the other one is something that I don't think you can Google, but you probably definitely know. I don't even know if this really qualifies, but I have had a pretty fun experience where I shattered a big portion of my face on my first research cruise, the first expedition I got to go on as a scientist, a marine scientist, and I was so excited. And they wanted to life flight me out of where we were. And I begged, and I didn't take any medication, and I didn't let them do anything to me. And I had a gaping hole in my face and a broken, shattered nose. My teeth were dislodged. And I stayed and I worked. And there's pictures of me even right after getting some first sort of doctoring of me in the hood plating bacteria on the ship. But yeah, I stayed for a whole nother week on board the ship to make sure that I could finish, because it was important and it was fun. And
of course, a random fact about Lisa that maybe you guys don't know: her nickname is Dynasty because she's small but she's strong. That's just like a story that just like reaffirms that your strength, which doesn't surprise me at all. So I always like to throw in one question, and the question for you is because you've literally been in tons of classrooms. You've been at the forefront of education outreach for years, and I've been beside you, watching you inspire tons of kids. So what excites you most about going into the classroom and speaking to a group of kids?
yeah, so I love lots of different things. But one aspect is their energy and their questions. So the energy that you get is different when you're in all the different grades, right? So if you were to break them up, elementary, middle school, and high school, that's very different, but there is still an energy in all of them. And that to me is incredibly powerful. And it's fun to be around, and it's fun to feel that. And the energy can also be negative, but I think that also for me, I think when I see maybe someone who's not into it, right? They don't want to be there. They don't like science. That's cool. And you don't have to be a scientist, but it's fun, exceptionally fun, when you can just kind of break the shell just a little bit and just ask them questions, find out what their gig is. Maybe it's not science, but sort of just, I don't know, just interact with them in some way. And because it is sort of transient, right? And that I don't get to teach the class, but I get to come and go. That's really fun for me, I think, is to not just, I don't seek them out, but when that happens, I definitely notice it. And it's fun for me. I don't know if that answers the question, but.
All right, Lisa, thank you so much. We're going to put this up on our Direct Connect page, and teachers, have Dr. Lisa come and speak to your class. We're excited to have her go out. Thank you so much for your time, Lisa.
Yeah, absolutely.